Hi everyone and welcome to the Pioneer episode of 254 Youth Policy Cafe. My name is Samantha Luceno and I am part of a team of 7 who established the platform. And considering the current policy environment, we'd like to begin our engagement with you by discussing the Building Bridges initiative. As you all know, the 2017 elections were extremely contentious, and to make the country better governable, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Odinga had an agreement to build bridges in the nation. So soon after, the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force was established, and in October of 2020, the Building Bridges Initiative report was launched. And yes, so without saying too much, let's just dive straight into the conversation. I think it's important that we answer a very basic question. What is BBI? Like, what is it? Is it the constitution? Like, what exactly is BBI? Stella?
So basically, BBI, it's what you call in public policy, it's a policy document. It's not a constitution. It's not a legislative document. It's not a legally binding sort of to say document. It's a report. And this is a report that is highlighting some of the critical issues that after the handshake, the ruling party and the opposition government felt like these are some of the issues that are always like constantly bringing the country on a halt, or these are the issues that are constantly affecting Kenyans. So it was important for people to go back and understand what are the issues, and also not just to understand what are the issues, but also to give a policy recommendation on some of the key solutions to some of these chronic problems that we face in the country. And these problems are mostly socio-economic problems, things that affect the mama mboga, things that affect not just the mama mboga, but also the politician. It's the things that affect not only the poor person, but also the rich person. It's things that are affecting everyone across the country. So we had a committee set up to go and talk to the citizens of Kenya to understand what are some of the issues that they felt that needed to be addressed. So like that is the whole motive behind BBI. But one of the key messages that we should send, I think, outright is we are not going to vote for BBI. We're going to vote for constitutional change. One of the constant conversation and one of the misconception I feel that is out there is people think that we're going to vote for BBI. But in essence, from a policy background, we are going to vote for constitutional change. BBI is beyond the areas that we are going to vote. BBI has a lot beyond what we're going to vote for change. There are things that actually we don't need to vote, but they are contained in BBI.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, Bonnie.
Yeah, generally, we are here because of BBI for today. And when you talk about BBI, we can't afford to just bury our head in the sand and assume that it does not concern us. Once we have the constitutional amendment, then whatever will be passed will affect everyone. If you read the BBI, if you never read it, okay? If you love it, if you hate it, it will affect you. And that's why we are saying it's good we engage right now before it is too late. At least when people will be making a decision, they'll make it from an informed point. From the outside, this is a street talk. They say this is a handshake, BBI, you can't separate the handshake between His Excellency the President and the former Right Honorable Raila Odinga, because these are the two people who initiated the BBI. And the issue is in the court. Professor, the Makueni governor, is in the court because he's arguing that this not the government cannot carry out a popular initiative. It should start from the bottom down. But in this case, it's coming from the top bottom. Okay? Yeah. So generally, the BBI is confusing people, but ourselves, we won't allow the confusion to come into our side. That's why we are here today, to understand really what is this BBI and what it means if it passes.
And maybe I can just chip in a little bit. Like for me, when I was doing my research project, one of the things that came out was the bottom of pyramid concept of development, where we see a lot of the time conversation always starts from top to bottom. But then a majority of the people are at the base of the pyramid. So if we want to create solutions for problems that face a country, we have to go to where the majority are. So if we are not starting the conversation from the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, then we are not creating sustainable solutions, because if we start from the top, then we are only focusing on a minority as opposed to majority. So good point.
Now, I don't want to dispute what you've said, but let's just go into the methodology that they've put forward within BBI. Because within BBI, I think it's chapter 1, they actually describe how they went about deciding that. Say, for instance, these groups feel like they're marginalized. These are the major issues that are facing, say, for instance, the youth, and thus coming up with the recommendations. So one of the things they actually say is that they had 93 forums at KICC. Yes, basically, they say that they've had even county forums, like they've engaged at county level. They've engaged various leaders of various groups, youth included, among those leaders. I think my major question, even as I go into this discussion, is, who are these people who are engaged? Let's just start there. Like, was public participation effective? Because that's what a lot of guys are now criticizing. Was public participation effective?
A good question, because I'm also trying to look for that answer. And yeah, ideally we know that we have two sides in this particular coin. There's a side that believes that two people with let me just call it like self-interest sat down and thought we need to create solutions and then look for the problems. While there's another camp that talks about there are two people who represent mass people, and they thought it is the appropriate thing to do to solve the problem that you've experienced in this country after every 5 years. Everyone in this panel will bear me witness that for the first 3 years, for the term of the 5 years, for the first 3 years, we really do well, even in terms of economic growth of the country. But in the 2 last years towards the election, the political environment starts chasing investors away. Then they thought, then we need to do something. And then the BBI happened. If you ask me whether there's the stakeholder participation was adequate, I did not see it happen. But then because they say it happened, probably they have approved. I don't know. Yeah. So my opinion is that I do not know whether it actually happened.
Yeah. And we're all sitting here as public policy analysts, and I feel like we keep abreast with government issues to a very large extent. No offense, but personally, I didn't see the call for comments. Even initially, I didn't see anywhere where I was told by they engage in this conversation. But maybe I was just not looking in the right places. But that's it.
But also,
yeah.
this is the thing. I feel like the approach of public participation that is used does not really reach out to everyone.
Yeah.
For example, if we look at the BBI report, it's purely in English. I mean, my probably people in the village who will not probably understand English at a very advanced level, or the language that is in BBI, how do they then get to understand what are the issues in BBI? Is it just by going to public forums? And even when we go to these public forums, to what extent are the issues that are in BBI brought out? Such that the language you use, yes, we recognize that English is our official language, but we also have other languages. We have people who actually don't understand English. So if we leave them out, and then these are actually the people who will go to vote. What in case we go to a referendum? So these people, how do they then end up understanding BBI? But even another conversation is, we are youths. I mean, what is the probability that a young person is going to go and sit down in a public forum to participate, to participate in public discussions? So it's also a point where, why can't we consider innovations in terms of public participation. Why did we not see a lot? I mean, go to the website. We have, in the BBI website, there should have been an opportunity for people to just submit their comments online without even having to write a document where they drop to there was a specific address that we were given to go and drop our comments or to submit on email. Why can't it just be somewhere online where I submit my comments? You see, like we are constantly, the approach of public participation that was used was not really substantial.
Even in the era of social media today, and so many youth, I mean, this country has 75.1% of its population being the youth, and youth are predominantly in the social media. Then I think that would have been one of the best tools really to use and get to have the views of the youth, the larger, the majority, so that we can be solving problems of the youth, not problems of the select youth, you know. So but then they say there's evidence for that. They say they have audios and materials. So I can only sit on this chair and accept, because but then again, I hope it would have been better. It would have been better too.
But the Daktari, you don't have to accept. Like, if you look onto public participation, they say that they pretend some copies, they've given some copies, and then the question was, what about those who don't get the copies? They say you can get online. But then let's go back into our country and look at the internet connectivity. What percentage? Look at the previous, we trying to launch the digital learning. It failed totally because most of the countries lacked what? The exactly. So when you talk about people getting the BBI from the online, fine, somebody could get into Facebook, but you might find that that person doesn't have a lot of time to spend reading the BBIs, especially the young. They are saying, this one does not concern us. Okay? Again, I think we are rushing it too much. We need to give people time to read and understand it. Like the signatures which have been collected, those people, did they really understand?
Did they read?
Or because their politicians just said, just come and sign. They came and signed. So if you are honest, we are making a lot of assumptions, and which will make us cry.
You're right. It's not okay.
Yeah. But another thing, and maybe just in the spirit of, like, you need to be forward looking. I think one important thing to consider is, as much as the Constitution of Kenya says that there should be public participation, it's not just with BBI, but like with so many other sectors, there's no guideline or framework for what public participation looks like. So I could easily just invite Bonnie, Stella, and Judy, and then say, by the way, tumeongea, now we had public participation, you know.
And we represent.
So I think, like, even in the spirit of like now getting youth involved, I hope guys know that there's a public participation bill that is out currently. I envision that they will call for comments at some point. So I think that's where we can begin with. Like, within those frameworks that are going to be put forward, we need to make sure that they're inclusive in terms of including young people. This bill should not then come and then go, and then we find it's one of those things that it just doesn't relate to any of us, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we'll find the website where that will probably be at, and we will include it here. But yes, in the meantime, I think like one starting point would be to follow the BBI website. Or rather, know the BBI website is there. So it's bbi.go.ke. And I mean, acquaint yourself with some of the things that they're saying are in the document, right? Yes, so now into the meat of the document, right? We've said why it was formed. We've said, these guys, they came, they had a handshake. I mean, because there was a lot, as you've said, immediately after elections, you find a situation where the ruling party and the non-ruling party of the opposition, there's just no, like, guys are just not in sync. Nothing can move on in the country because everyone is dissatisfied and things like that. So again, like, it's important to know that the intention behind BBI was for everyone to be included, in essence, so that everyone can be satisfied. So maybe just to, in almost point form, tell us what the issues are within BBI. Because, like, at least you've read BBI to a good extent. You know some of the things that they were trying to solve. Yeah.
So I think so. In essence, from my perspective, I would structure BBI into three components. There is the constitutional reform, there is the legislative reform, and there is a component of institutional reform. Constitutional reform, there are issues mostly that centers around representation. Probably that is the most contentious bit about BBI. It's where we talk about a prime minister position. It's where we talk about bringing the executive back to legislature. Probably something we can go deeper into discussion at some point. And then we go to the legislative. These are matters that parliamentarians discuss on a routine basis in parliament. And these are issues like, for example, we have issues of youths, we have issues of persons with disabilities. These are some of the legislative matters that are brought in BBI. And we have acts of parliament then that are proposed to be reviewed to include, to address some of the legislative issues. Then when it goes to institutional reforms, like one that is central to us as youth is the establishment of a youth commission. We have proposal to have a youth commission that is majorly a commission to represent the interests and the issues that affect the youth. So for me, that's how I would essentially break the BBI reports.
So I think that's one aspect, and I think we should definitely now, like after this, now go deeper into like what that looks like. Yes. And I think it's very important to know what exactly that looks like and what we require to actually get BBI implemented. So I think that's something that we must go into. But also just to speak to, I think it's important that we speak to some of the issues that we feel may affect us, like in terms of the problems that they're trying to solve. Obviously, we know it came post-election, and we are going into 2022
yes,
election.
yes, yes.
And yes, I get the urgency in trying to implement it so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. But just speak to, like, almost in point form. I mean, like, what are some of the issues that are raised within the document?
So generally, the document is good to some extent, but again, we need to ask ourselves. There's a question with the majority, we're interacting with majority there outside. The question is it the priority? Like currently, we have the doctor strike, we have the COVID, but again, you have the BBI. So I don't know, but from the look, it seems it's the priority. And since it's priority, we have to deal with it.
You guys are looking my question. Yeah. But anyway, basically, like the issues, obviously there's national ethos that's brought up a lot. Marginalization is also like overemphasized within the document of various groups, persons with disabilities.
Yeah, generally the BBI has a lot of issues concerning almost every group. It has the issues concerning the youth, the women. You remember the two-dan gender rule, which the parliament has been trying to implement, and it has failed totally. You remember the duale.
But we are effectively implementing it here.
Effectively.
Yeah. We are trying, yeah. So we have the two-dan gender rule. We have the executive, where they're proposing to expand the executive to include the prime minister, deputy prime minister, to create the office of the official opposition, and the like. And actually, that's a key area which needs the referendum, because that one touches on the constitution, and it cannot go through the parliament without the public putting the consent on it. Yeah. Also, we have the issue of the distribution of the natural resources, because there are some people who feel that they are marginalized, they've not benefited from this government and the previous ones. Also, we have the issues to deal with the injustices. We have some communities which have suffered in the previous regimes. So basically, looking at the motive of the BBI is good, okay? The motive looks good, but now the issue is the people who are implementing it.
Yeah, so if I can add on what Boniface says, looking at BBI, there are valid problems, there are valid concerns. The 9 points are very valid, and there are issues we need to handle. And I'll tell you for sure that in as much as sounds a priority when it's not supposed to be a priority, we need to have a solution for 2022 because we do not want to have repeat elections again or post-election violence again, or at least we've seen some indicators of not good things happening and people getting to camp and all that. Yeah, so in one or the other, you can argue that we actually need BBI. In the other way, you'll say, no, we don't need it. But yes, so the points that were brought out, they were actually valid points. They might not have done stakeholder participation adequately, but it's just that they've highlighted the problems that we need to solve. But how to solve them, I think the BBI has not adequately addressed how to solve the problems. Because at some point, look at the section that talks about shared prosperity. I was just going through, it's one of the 9-point agenda. And they talk about getting to create 30% quota for youth in county at the small levels. They've enumerated problems. But then when you go to the BBI task force recommendation, the solutions for that are missing. Then I ask myself, we would have done better. We would have done something better than that. We would have adequately handled the solutions. Then we'll have solved the problems of this country. And at the end of the day, we all need to have, to move Kenya from the poverty levels that we are, to some level where we don't have a majority of Kenyans living below the poverty levels, below the poverty lines, and also to get to boost shared prosperity in this country. Yeah, so I think this is a good conversation, and we'll continue enlightening people to ask the right questions. Because if Kenyans start asking the right questions, then we can have leaders accountable for the actions they take.
Judy, I really like what you've said. Actually, the entire point of this conversation is whether we don't know everything, but we need you to ask the right questions. And that's the type of conversation we're trying to start up at this point. I don't want to overdwell. I think what we have raised here sets a very good foundation for part 2 of this conversation. So I think next time, what we need to really adequately address is referendum or not. And if referendum, if yes, referendum.
BBI or PPE.
Do we want referendum of yes, no? You need to accept constitution one time, like yote, ama there are some things that we may do better,
And we look forward for more interaction, and we are looking forward for your comments and your interaction, telling us how you think about some of the issues that we've raised, issues on public participation, issues of inclusion. Yeah, let's have more conversation on our social media platforms.
As the team agrees, we are learning this BBI together. So don't shy away from, posting your comments. Yeah, you'll always get someone to address them. And we're really looking forward to hear from you.
Sure. Thank you for your time, and expect more of this as we progress. And if you have any issue that you feel that you need to discuss us, you can forward it through our social media and the pages that we've given, the links, so that we can move together. At this time, we can't afford. We can't afford. I heard somebody say that the BBI train has left the station. We're going to chase it. Yeah?
We are 75% of this country.
Yeah.
We are 75%.
The youth. We can't afford to sit down and cry again. Yeah, we have to. The issue of the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. That's a no. We are the leaders of today, and we must bring the change into this country.
Yeah. So, so with that, I think thank you for listening to part 1 of this conversation. It's been a pleasure sharing our insights with you. Please, please, please join us next week for part 2 of the BBI conversation. Yeah.